I appreciate that all of you were willing to come out today and give up your lovely Saturday morning to be here with us and to learn more about the folks who are running. So thank you very much.
So if you want to know a little bit more about the League of Women Voters, it was founded in 1920 out of the suffragette movement, giving women the right to vote. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports, opposes, or recommends candidates for office. The League's purpose is to promote responsibility and through informed and active participation of all citizens. Providing this forum allows citizens to become better informed about the issues facing the community and candidates running for office. We're pleased to be able to offer this service to you. So as you can see from the program, if you picked up one out there, we are actually offering 3 forums today. And the first will be for candidates running for Illinois House Republican District 51. The second one will be for candidates running for Illinois Senate District 26. And lastly, the candidates running for Illinois Congressional District 6. And all of the candidates have been contacted by mail, email, and phone prior to this event. And the candidates have agreed to abide by the ground rules provided by the League of Women Voters. And so everyone understands these are the rules. The candidates have drawn numbers to determine speaking order. Did we do that for you yet? Okay, we will do that. The moderator will rotate this order during the forum for questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for each of their introductions. Next, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer questions. And at the end, each candidate will have 1 minute closing, to a total of about 50 minutes to get set up for the next forum. And League members will act as timers. And my timers are right here in the front row. And they will be giving a 30-second and a 15-second warning. So quickly, please complete your thoughts. And you'll see when you see the stop sign. And time limits will be enforced out of respect for all candidates. Each questions will be provided by the audience. Each question will be answered by all candidates. So please, audience, ask questions that pertain to all. I do have some runners, and if you guys just lift up your hands here, those folks will be handing out, if you don't already have them, cards and pencils, and they will be gathering them up. Then the League members, these are yellow cards, gold cards that we're using right now. They're available for you to write your questions on, which will be picked up then by my volunteers, and the questions will be reviewed for clarity, appropriateness, and to avoid duplication. Candidates will have been asked not to interrupt one another. We're going to be respectful. The moderator will repeat a question if necessary, and the candidates are asked to speak to the audience. So audience, you all are participating. So we ask you please to turn off your electronic devices. The forum will be taped for League of Women Voters use in education for the public, and the candidates have agreed to this. And please hold all applause until the end, and please do not demonstrate in any way to show support for a candidate. There's space outside this room for the candidates to speak to supporters after the forum, and campaign literature will be available on the table in the lobby if they have brought some, but no campaign signs may be posted. And I'm pleased to introduce then our moderator, Taman Bradley, who is the weekend anchor and political news reporter for WGN Television. We're delighted to have you. Thank you. And also, he's the station's political reporter, and he worked as the ABC News correspondent based out of Washington, D.C., where he covered a lot of breaking news for the network's affiliate service. So we're really, really delighted to have you. Thank you. We needed numbers? We did.
I did.
Okay, we got it. Okay.
I didn't look at the answers, so I don't know who looked.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
You guys are, okay, all right.
Let's start. I do. Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everybody, and my microphone is on. It sounds like terrific. Thank you both for being here. So we're starting this morning, Saturday Morning Democracy, with the Illinois House District 51 race, and we have two candidates on the ballot, Miss Mary Edly-Allen and Miss Helene Miller Walsh. And we'll start with your 2-minute introduction. By number draw, Ms. Walsh, you will go first.
Very good. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for inviting us to be here this morning. Thank you to Mon for being here. Thank you, Ms. Mary Edly-Allen, for joining me as well, or for me joining you. I wanted to say that 7 weeks ago I was appointed to the 51st District as a representative. I never had any intentions of ever running for office, ever before, but a year ago I turned to my daughter and I said, I'm really disgusted by my property taxes and I'm thinking about leaving the state and I don't want you to stay here. I don't want you to settle down. You've worked too hard and I don't want everyone else sucking off of your teat. And she said, Mom, because of what I do, I'm going to wind up here or in New York or in California. And if you're not here, I'm not going to have grandchildren. So I burst out laughing. And I said, oh, young grasshopper, we just had a knife fight and I didn't even get to take out my knife. When this position became available, I threw my hat into the ring because I have to do what I can to stop what I call the Madigan fiscal madness that is going on in this state. Our property taxes are the second highest in the nation. People are leaving this state at the greatest rate, the greater rate than in any other state in the country. We are losing our major resource, which is human capital. Businesses are fleeing. They no longer want to pay the taxes. And until we reform our tax structure, our pensions, and we must
Helene,
fire
could you use the mic, please? There are people back here that can't hear.
Oh, okay, is that better? And until we fire Mike Madigan, no one should be allowed to run this state into the ground, and anyone who is elected who will vote for him as their first vote should not be appointed to this position.
Thank you. Ms. Edly-Allen. 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. It's amazing to think that only less than 100 years ago, women didn't even have the right to vote. So the idea that we're actually having this forum and this debate is really exciting. This is democracy at its best. I'm so glad that Ms. Representative Walsh was able to attend. You didn't respond up until this morning. So my statement is a little bit different than what I had originally proposed. But I'm an elementary school teacher, and I decided to run for state representative because I just thought that our voice was not being heard in Springfield. My first representative prior to Representative Walsh didn't support any of the common sense gun legislation that had come through and voted against the Equal Rights Amendment. So those two positions right away made me just really very concerned of the direction that our state was going. I have to readjust because Representative Walsh is next to me, and I'm so glad that you are here because we do need to have these honest, open conversations. We're not going to move forward as a state or a country by demonizing each other and calling each other names. So we can disagree on policy, but we should not demonize each other. I believe that we both have the state's interest at heart. I have to agree with Representative Walsh that property taxes are our biggest issue. And we need to, we'll talk about that in our tax structure. We already agree on those two things. I wanted to tell a story about my dad and the integrity that I bring, a father that worked for 42 years for the same company, had a pen and a pencil on top of the refrigerator that we were never able to touch. And this is how I would treat our tax dollars, exactly like those pencils. They belong to the company, and you know, we need to be responsible in how we spend our tax dollars.
Okay, all right. Now let's move to the questions. Audience members, if you have questions that you'd like these candidates to address, please write them on the yellow index cards provided and pass them to the aisle for collection. Some are starting to pour in, and we'll start with a few of my own. First question, 1 minute to answer for Ms. Edly-Allen. Name an issue, you're a Democrat, name an issue where you disagree with your party's nominee for Governor J.B. Pritzker.
I'm sorry, repeat the question? Something I disagree with?
Name an issue where you disagree with your party's candidate for Governor, should be put through in your case?
Well, that's a really difficult question to ask me because I'm always looking at solution-oriented answers where I can agree with someone, even with Representative Walsh, where we are completely extreme on two ends of the spectrum between immigration and just, people, humanity in general. I'm thinking of JB, and I can only think of things I have in common. I know he supports the woman's right to choose, which is really important to me. I believe the government does not belong in making decisions for women's bodies. So I'm sorry to kind of take a pass on that because I don't know of any policy that I disagree with JB on at this point.
Ms. Miller Walsh, 1 minute. Name an issue where you disagree with your party's nominee for governor. In your case, Bruce Brown.
Yes, I disagree with the governor and his support for a sanctuary state. I believe in immigration, but I believe in legal immigration. My family is a family of immigrants on both sides, but they came here legally.
Okay. Let's move to another question. Again, 1 minute. We begin this time with Ms. Miller Walsh. Wanted to ask about social media posts. You have Facebook posts that no longer exist, touting that former Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore's accusers were paid to speak out. Also, you wondered whether John McCain's cancer treatment caused him to go against President Trump. What should voters take away from those posts?
First of all, I've been accused of scrubbing my Facebook page, but I never scrubbed anything. So I don't know where you all found this post, because if you found it, it wasn't scrubbed. I didn't even know what scrubbing was until I was accused of scrubbing. So I don't know what you're talking about regarding the scrubbing of my Facebook post. And quite frankly, this election is not about Facebook posts. This is about fiscal sanity coming back to Illinois and being able to keep more people in Illinois, especially our young adults, and reducing our taxes and reducing our spending. Our spending is out of control in this state.
Ms. Edly-Allen, if you'd like to weigh in on that, 1 minute, please.
Well, I'm a little incredulous on your statement because the idea that you would say, Representative Walsh, that you don't know anything about this is kind of concerning to me. And there were posts from 2014 and beyond that were extremely xenophobic, were extremely, I would just encapsulate it by saying they were all threatening humanity. So yes, I agree with your ideas about taxation and how much we pay too much property tax, and there are different solutions for that. I disagree with your comment that your posts, you don't know anything about the posting of. Then maybe you could explain who did remove all of your posts from 2014, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So yeah, they're all captured, and this is an extreme concern for me as a human being that someone representing our district has such extreme views as you do, which those are your views, but I do believe they are too extreme for our district.
Okay, we need to move on. Let's talk about, if we could, ladies, sexual harassment. There's a new poll by the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute looking at the public's feelings. 59% of Democrats in Illinois say people have a better understanding of sexual harassment. 41% of Republicans were least likely to agree that we have a better understanding of sexual harassment. What is your understanding of sexual harassment, and what role as a public servant can you play to combat sexual harassment, Ms. Edly-Allen?
What an excellent question, and so timely at this time in our, just not our state, but our country. Anyone who is a woman, and I can't speak for all women, I can only speak for myself as a woman, we have all experienced different levels of sexual harassment, from an inappropriate joke in a lounge, at work, to just inappropriate things. I worked for an airline when I was very young, and I was subjected to different ways of that were subliminal with sexual harassment, with having Playboy magazines out on a table in front of me, having men coming into the bathroom when I was going in there. Those are all sexual harassment. We've accepted really poor behavior for many, many years, and this is the awakening of women to say enough is enough. It's those subtle things, it's those little off-color jokes about women And it starts with teaching our young men how to treat women, that we are not objects, that we have our own voice. Again, I'll remind us all, we didn't have the right to vote up in less than 100 years ago as women.
Ms. Miller Walsh, 1 minute. Would you like to be repeated?
Yes, please.
Sure. What's your understanding of sexual harassment, and what role as a public servant can you play to combat sexual harassment?
So there's sexual harassment that has existed probably for centuries. It's nothing new in this country. I do believe that I do believe there have been tremendous advancements and gains made. I do believe many more men and women are much more aware of their rights, not only in the workplace, but even in their homes. I just think that we have made a lot of progress, and there's still more progress to be made. But I don't see that as the government's role. I see that as the role of moms and dads and schools and our religious institutions to remind one another to treat each other with humanity and respect, male or female.
All right, Ms. Miller Walsh, next question we begin with you. Let's talk property taxes. Property tax is a huge issue here in the suburbs. How do you view the issue? And if you think folks in the district pay too much in property taxes, what's your specific plan to provide relief? Yes.
Our property taxes are out of control. We have the second highest property taxes in the country. It is ridiculous. My husband and I were able to buy a home 2 years ago, and when I look at when we pay the bank, I'm paying more in we are paying more in property taxes than we pay on our mortgage. I would like to introduce a bill to prohibit estate property tax. One of the problems is that 2/3 of our total property taxes go to our schools. In Illinois, we have 850 school districts in Illinois. The national average is only 650. Florida has only 50 school districts. We spend 2 times the national average on administrative costs and benefits. We do not have a revenue problem in Illinois, we have a spending problem. Less than half of the new property taxes have gone to services. It is time to take our property taxes back and let more people in Illinois know where their money is going and consolidate. We have got to consolidate our school systems.
Thank you very much.
Districts, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. All right, so we need to get to audience questions. There are
Wait,
a
she
lot.
didn't, wait, she didn't get
Oh, I'm
to.
sorry. Yes, please.
Please, I really want to answer the question about property taxes, because yes, we can agree that this is one of the major issues when I knock on doors. People want to ask me, what can you do about property taxes? And I'm going to really try to talk really fast because I know the timer is going to come up. But what we need is that the state needs to start pulling its weight in funding schools properly. Right now, Illinois ranks at the bottom in how much we fund to schools. And yes, we have a major burden as the homeowner with our property taxes. We all love strong schools. We move to certain communities because of those strong schools. That's where our tax dollars have been going. We need to shift the burden to the state to pay for the unfunded mandates that come through and to give more funding to our schools on the local level. When Representative Walsh talks about how many school districts are in different places, these states have a different population. We have a much higher population than Florida, so they're going to have less school districts. And yeah, so this is one area we can both agree on. The state needs to start carrying a heavier burden of paying its fair share to the schools, so we can stay strong.
Thank you. All right, so an audience question here. We'll start with you, Ms. Edly-Allen, 1 minute. What's the most important change to make to correct the Illinois budget shortfall and pay down debt?
Well, there are 2 things that we can do. Oh my goodness, in a minute and a half. 2 things that we can do. First, we need to have additional revenue. And there's this scare tactic about, raising taxes. Democrats want to raise taxes. And what we really are proposing is that we shift the burden to the wealthy. 90% of the population would get a tax decrease, and the wealthy needs to carry its fair burden of taxes. And everyone agrees with this. Right now, Illinois has a flat tax. We are one of 8 states that has the flat tax. Wisconsin has a progressive tax. Our federal taxes are on the graduated system. It's a more fair system than the flat tax. It's not a scary thing. I don't believe in fear-mongering and saying, oh, how awful certain proposals are. This is how our federal government runs, by a more fair system where the weight is on the wealthy. So that's what I would propose as far as revenue. And with the pensions you brought up, with revenue. You know, I'm a teacher, I pay into my pension, I deserve to have my pension. What I don't deserve
Okay.
is that people take the money from the pensions and pay down other things instead.
Okay.
That's wrong.
And Ms. Miller Walsh, consider that you have an extra 7 seconds.
Budget solutions, I have a list here. We need to know how much money we have, but Illinois executives and legislative revenue estimates are rarely on target, and the General Assembly has not adopted a revenue estimate since 2014. We need to adopt spending caps to give lawmakers a consistent, reliable number for budget planning. We need to save more money. We should maintain at least 5% of the general revenue in a reserve fund to help offset lost revenue and automatic spending increases during recessions. We have got to pay down our backlog of unpaid bills. We are at $6 billion in unpaid bills. We need to cut income tax rates to provide tax relief and improve the predictability of Illinois' tax portfolio. We should rely on recurring revenue to fund recurring expenses, but not use one-time revenue infusions to cover overspending. Redefine revenue to exclude debt refinancing or fund sweeps, and avoid issuing bonds to pay for yearly operations or pension funds.
Okay. Sticking with you, Ms. Miller Walsh, to begin here, 1 minute. Would you support a minimum wage of $15 an hour?
No,
Why not?
because I believe in the free market, and I believe that the free market will determine how much people get paid.
1 minute for you, Ms. Edly-Allen.
Yes. I believe that people deserve a fair wage, right? Currently, people working in these low-level positions can't even afford to eat. I work with those families. So I believe if we leave it up to the free market, we would have more people in poverty. So this is one issue that we are completely opposite on. I support $15 an hour for people to actually eat.
Okay. Starting with you, Ms. Edly-Allen, 1 minute. I'll modify this question slightly. Please explain your position on abortion, medical treatment, including contraception for women.
Okay. Again, another issue that we are completely on opposite ends of the spectrum. I do not believe in abortion. I don't think abortion is a good solution, but I believe in a woman's right to choose. I don't believe the government has the right to tell a woman what she should do with her body. That should be left up to the woman and her physician. So yes, and these clinics that support overall women's health, we need to continue to support that. I know that the other side will continually talk about abortion. Abortion is not the only thing that these places provide. They provide economic support, and they I'm starting to lose. This time is like really making me stressed out. I'm a teacher. I'm not a timed person talking. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. So and I'm used to an exchange of a dialogue back and forth, which is I think is more representative of our democracy, not this. But yes, so I believe in a woman's right to choose, and I'm also pro-life.
Okay, all right.
I have space on my platform for both of us.
Your time is expired. All right, Ms. Miller Walsh, 1 minute. Give us your position on abortion and medical treatment, contraception for women.
I am pro-life. I believe that life begins in the womb. I do not believe that the government should be funding any abortions ever.
Okay. Wanted to return, we'll start with you, Ms. Miller Walsh, to one of my questions. What is House Speaker Michael Madigan's legacy?
I call it death and destruction of the state of Illinois. This man has been in office since 1971. He has ruled the state since 1983 for all but 2 years. And then in 1998, he took over as the head of the state party. Nothing happens in Illinois at the government level, almost all levels now, without Michael Madigan. And we are a financial fiscal mess. And I believe it's because of Mike Madigan.
Ms. Edly-Allen, 1 minute.
Okay.
What is House Speaker Michael Madigan's legacy?
Okay, I think your representative comments about death and destruction again shows the juxtaposition between our two places as candidates. I would never demonize anyone. I won't demonize Rauner, I won't demonize Speaker Madigan. I believe all of us are serving because we believe that we can do better than the next person. I believe I can do better than Representative Walsh. Speaker Madigan, I'm asked this question at the door a lot about Speaker Madigan. I don't know Speaker Madigan. I am a grassroots candidate. I had 62 friends get the 1,472 signatures I needed to get on the ballot. I have no connection to the Democratic Party in that regard. I have not received any money from the Democratic Party. I am independent. I was married 25 years. I found my own voice, filed for divorce. This is a little bit personal, but I am never going to give up my voice to anyone or anything. I'm going to vote my core values and what I believe is right and what I believe the district wants, which is totally different from what we have right now.
All right, your time has expired. All right, so 1 minute, we'll start with you, Ms. Edly-Allen. What is your position on legalizing recreational marijuana in the state of Illinois?
Okay, it's a really good question, and this one has touched my life personally because I have loved ones that struggle with addiction. So I have said that I do support legalization with the caveat that we need to have support for the other side. We need to have support for mental illness and substance abuse treatment programs to counteract the abuse that would come on the other side of legalizing marijuana. I have heard about Colorado with their legalization, that they have had issues. As a teacher, I always look at things like, how can we learn from that? So how can we implement the things that Colorado has done correctly and maybe the things that didn't work out so well in legalizing marijuana? But again, with the other side of treatment programs for substance abuse issues.
I do not believe in legalizing marijuana, but I do believe in decriminalizing it. The statistics show that in Colorado, that the use of marijuana has increased a lot of problems, and there have been I can't remember the word right now, but it has not been helpful. I had the privilege of attending the Lake County Opioid Initiative event a couple weeks ago, and this county, Lake County in particular, is working very hard with government wraparound services, but through the coroner's office, the state's attorney's office, the sheriff's office, and various chiefs of police, and they do not support legalizing marijuana.
All right, thank you very much. We will begin with you, Ms. Miller Walsh. 1 minute, do you support or oppose a graduated income tax in Illinois?
I do, hold on, I have a few notes here. I do not support a graduated income tax. The state should not be turning to taxpayers to continue feeding our spending habit. It should reject a progressive tax, and lawmakers should learn to live and to spend within their means. One of the problems is the state constitution requires a flat tax. In order to repeal a flat tax would require support from 3/5 of the majority of the Illinois House and Senate. Once protection is lost, taxpayers would need the same 3/5 support to reinstate. Illinois families cannot afford more taxes. It is already experiencing the weakest economic expansion in state history. Progressive income tax hike will hinder states' already sluggish economy. We must learn to spend within our means. We must limit growth in spending to what the taxpayers can afford. From 2006 to 2016, in states without a progressive income tax, employment grew by 37%. The statistics,
Thank you. Graduated income tax, yes or no, and why?
Yes, I would support it, and I would go back to our founding fathers. When they started our country, they knew with capitalism, 10% of the population would earn a lot of money, and the 90% of us would not earn as much. So that there was a moral obligation to those who made a little bit more to pay a little bit more. This is not a scary thing. Wisconsin has a progressive tax. We are only one of 8 that has the flat tax. So this is really just a shift of the burden to the wealthy. And yeah, I agree, we do pay too much in property taxes, and this is where the income tax and shifting the burden from the 90% of us to the 10% would bring in a little more revenue. And I don't believe it's a scary thing to go back to our Constitution. We had to make changes on different things with our amendments, like slavery and things like that. So these are good things that we can do to change where we began as a country and where we are now moving towards. Again, I don't think that it's as scary as Representative Walsh makes it out to be.
Okay, shifting gears, 1 minute, we'll start with you. Ms. Edly-Allen, do you think elections should be publicly funded? And what is your position on campaign finance reform?
Well, in a perfect world, I wish we all got $100,000 and that's all we got to spend, because I do believe with Citizens United and unlimited amounts of money coming into campaigns, it's really tainting it. For example, my opponent has been able to mail out 6 mailers. They're very expensive, and I have not been able to do that. I have been able to knock on doors because that's what democracy is all about. It's about the relationships. So, you know, when you don't have the funds to make commercials or get flyers out, it makes it a little more difficult. So all around the board, I know when Senator McConkey, when we were speaking on the Herald endorsement that you were not at, they were talking about how Speaker takes so much money, and I said, you know what, the Uline family has pumped in $4 million into the state campaign. So I agree, we need to get rid of money out of politics. I don't know what the solution is, but doesn't it sound kind of good, $100,000 for everybody, and do with it what you'd like?
I don't think the government should be funding campaigns. I do believe that it's a combination of, I would like complete transparency, immediate transparency for campaign finance reform. I know that it's a combination of message, manpower, and money, but the money, you know, it's a free market still. I know that we have had, last weekend we had 150 people out walking and knocking on doors for my campaign, and I've had people out walking. We have covered almost every precinct with manpower, and also the money, you know, getting my message out it's very helpful.
This isn't good for broadcast.
All right. Do you support, Ms. Miller Walsh, arming teachers? Arming teachers. 1 minute.
I know that there are, right now what's happening at our schools is not acceptable. Right now we have too many schools that are not secure, and too many places, too many people are just allowed to walk right in. We need some new security measures, and I believe they need to be implemented at the local level. I do believe too that teachers who are well trained, properly trained, would be a benefit in some schools. I have no problem. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I know that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. A bucket of rocks at the door for the kids to throw at a gunman will not work.
1 minute.
This one's really hard for me as a teacher because I think theory and application has a Grand Canyon space between it. If you ask any teacher, most will say, no way, Jose. We have enough of a responsibility making sure the peanut allergy child doesn't die from eating a nut and having to administer an EpiPen. So this idea that arming teachers is a solution is no. I think Ms. Walsh needs to go to a school and see how they operate at this point, because you cannot walk right into any school anymore. If you go to Libertyville High School, they have bulletproof glass. Then they have a 2-tier entry system. They have cameras everywhere. In the school that I work, it has very conservative ways of keeping people from coming in that don't belong inside the school. So there are other ways than arming teachers, which is absolutely absurd. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe that a person has a right to bear arms. I just don't believe they have the right to bear them in a school. I support having an armed officer have a gun, but not teachers. Thank you.
Your time has expired. Thank you very much. Real differences are very different. This is enjoyable. Let's talk about transportation.
Right here. Country.
You'll have a choice.
United States, right here. Microcosm of our country.
Illinois is a transportation hub with our aging infrastructure. What are your ideas for funding our roads, bridges, schools, and et cetera? Someone mentioned to me actually this morning that public transit is an issue. There's no light rail and things of that nature. Ms. Edly-Allen, 1 minute.
Yeah, well, when I interviewed with the Sierra Club, we talked about moving people and moving people more creatively, because our district, we have 53 as part of our platform, and being asked if we want 53 through our district. And I do believe we need to find alternate ways to move people. I don't have all the solutions on how to move people, but I think we need to get more creative. We need to move from fossil fuels. We need to invest in public transportation. We should be able to get a bus down at the end of our street. We need to move away from using cars. Our roads were created when we had horse and buggies. We have intersections where roads go right over the train tracks. We need to create overpasses and underpasses and widen the roads that we already have to move people more smartly. So I'm not going to take all the time this time. The gun thing kind of still has my heart going.
Our infrastructure is a key component to the financial livelihood of this state. We do need to invest in our infrastructure. I know that as it relates to Route 53, I think there have been studies going on now off and on for 60 years. I don't know how it will, the newest study, we haven't seen the results yet, but there have got to be all sorts of alternative ways to look at our transportation. I know that transportation in the northern part of our district is awful. And heading east to west, north to south, it doesn't matter where you're going. Unless you know the small side farm roads, you have trouble getting from A to B in what would otherwise be a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. We will continue with you, Ms. Miller Walsh. 1 minute. We had a guilty verdict in the Jason Van Dyke trial in Chicago yesterday. What do you think of that?
I think justice was served. I mean, I've seen the video. I did not listen to the trial. I know a lot of people. I do a lot of work on the south side of Chicago, around 63rd and South King Drive. So I've been privy to a lot of issues and thoughts and sentiments regarding police and the local community. I do believe that justice was served, and I'm really glad that the thoughts that I heard that came out from some of the jurors was that they worked very well together. It was the way it was supposed to work, and I thought it was good.
Ms. Edly-Allen, 1 minute.
Yes, I also agree that justice was served, but I would like to shine a light on an issue that is bigger than just this incident, that we need to train officers to deal with mentally ill patients or citizens. When I was at an event where the Buffalo Grove police chief attended, he said he had 63 police officers, but only had enough money to train 15 of them in the week-long training that the state provides on how to deal with mentally ill citizens. And that plays a role in this whole issue, and I believe if we knew how to if officers knew how to de-escalate these situations, we would be better served.
We will stick with you, Ms. Edly-Allen. 1 minute. There's a great debate going on in Illinois about the state losing population and businesses relocating. Do you see a problem, and what can be done to keep residents here in the state?
Well, one thing we can do as a state is we can pass a budget and not hold the state hostage for over 700 days where people don't know where they're going to get their next paycheck. So if I'm a business and I'm thinking of relocating somewhere, am I going to come to a state where they can't even pass a budget for 700 days? So that would be the first thing that I would do. And then, you know, with the funding problems that we had, a lot of our state universities were unable to give students the monies that they needed in order to stay in school to an in-state tuition. My son was one of them. He's a scholar, and he received more money from an out-of-state school, so he chose that. We tried to go back to U of I, but unfortunately, because of those budget cuts, they weren't able to provide the monies that they needed to the students, so that when the students go out of state to study, they tend to stay out of state. So we need to work on our budget. That's really what it comes down to. And we need some voices of reason and common sense, like a teacher.
Ms. Miller Walsh, 1 minute.
10 years ago, every 14 minutes, a family was leaving the state of Illinois. Now it's every 7 minutes. Those are the producers, the makers, the manufacturers, the people who employ others. The population loss in this state is due to property taxes. Ms. Mary Edly-Allen and I have both said every time we go to a door, people are saying, what, our property taxes are ridiculous, I want to leave this state. We have got to fix our fiscal mess. We need to freeze our property taxes and then lower them. We need to enact pension reform. We need to consolidate the number of government bodies in the state. I don't know if you're aware, but there are more than 7,000 bodies of local government in Illinois. The next state with the highest number is Texas with 5,000, and after that it's Missouri with 3,000. That's not because we have a higher population. We need to consolidate our school districts. We need to provide financial transparency, and we need term limits.
Okay. Staying with you, Ms. Miller Walsh, we touched on it earlier, evidently it's on people's minds and from the audience. What do you consider the line between free speech and hate speech?
Free speech, I don't even know what hate speech is. You're allowed to say whatever you want in this country. We have the First Amendment. That's called free speech. And so what you see as hate speech is not necessarily what I see as hate speech, is not necessarily what this lovely lady sees as hate speech. So I don't know what hate speech is. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not offended by certain speech, but I certainly am, and I don't like what I hear in too many places, whether it be on the news channels right now or in the public realm, when I see what's going on in Washington, D.C., whether it be on the floor of the Senate. I mean, some people might consider that to be hate speech, but I don't see, I believe in freedom of speech.
Ms. Edly-Allen?
Another area where we do agree on freedom of speech. However, there are limitations. For example, when you go into an airport, you cannot say, I have a bomb. So there are certain things that need to keep us safe. I do believe that we should be able to have a civil discourse as we are having today, but we can disagree on certain, the level of let's just go back to, we both agree on the free speech, but a point that I would like to make is that speech is speech, but where we really need to work on is changing hearts, because that's where it starts. Hate speech has to start somewhere. And I had a white child tell one of my Mexican children, why don't you go back to Mexico? That is not something that child was born with. That was something that happened at home. So when we perpetuate things on our Facebook posts that are negative towards certain communities like the Muslim community, we will create people who are filled with hate and hate speech.
Okay, before we go to our closing statements, I think we have time for one more. We start with you, Ms. Edly-Allen. 1 minute. Illinois high schools are not required to include discussions of consensual sex and/or LGBTQ issues and information. What is your view on this?
Did you say they're not allowed?
Not allowed, yes.
Well, here...
Not required, I should say.
Okay.
Not required.
Not required to. Herein lies the problem of just this whole discussion. I believe was one of the first questions about sexual harassment. If we don't start having some of these really uncomfortable conversations on how to talk to each other respectfully, what negative speech is, what hate speech is, we're never going to move forward. So we need to be brave. We need to approach these conversations in a kind and civil way and teach our children and model how to be kinder citizens. So I believe that we should support that in schools. Again, it's left up to the local school boards, and that's why it's really important to stay involved in your local elections to support people who carry your same values.
Thank you. Ms. Miller Walsh, 1 minute, please. Sure, no problem. Illinois high schools are not required to include discussion of consensual sex and/or LGBT issues and information. What is your view on this?
So I believe the schools are supposed to teach reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and provide for physical exercise. I believe that these other discussions should be had at home and in the church or your synagogue or your mosque. I believe that my values are not necessarily my teachers' values, and I do not want my schools I do not want the schools teaching my children about sex or sex ed or all these other issues. I believe that the schools are designed for reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Thank you very much. Time requires now that we move to closing statements. Candidates, you'll have 1 minute each, and we will start, I believe we'll start with you, Ms. Miller Walsh, for the opening. So we'll start with you, Ms. Edly-Allen, for the closing. 1 minute, please, your closing statement.
I'm so glad that I had this opportunity to talk to each of you and that you get to hear both sides of our election here. This couldn't be a more important race. It couldn't be a more important time to vote. This race is a microcosm of our country. We represent the two spectrums of what we have right now in our country. We have a homophobic, racist, kind of xenophobic views, and we have, the other side. We have a candidate who supports guns in schools, and we have a candidate who does not believe in arming teachers. So, when Ms. Walsh was talking about this last statement about we can't have the schools need to be teaching math of all these different subjects, I also believe we need to model kindness. This is what we need to bring back into our communities, and saying that it's left up to the home, it's not. We don't know how to have civil discourse. And even with my students, when after the election, I really wanted to tell the story about how...
Expired. Miss
I wasn't
Miller
prepared
Walsh.
that she was coming, and she just came today. Had I known, I would have.
Okay, all right.
So anyway, my poor immigrant students.
Please meet and greet the audience. Yes, Ms. Miller.
Yes, please talk to me afterwards.
This election is about saving Illinois. We are a fiscal mess. This is not about the social issues, in my opinion. We can deal with those, and we do deal with those, but this is not. Illinois is not necessarily a microcosm. We are unfortunately the worst state financially in the nation. And I know that there are many other states that are in a much better position. I'm not xenophobic. I have traveled the globe. I've been very fortunate, but I do believe that people belong here, coming here legally. I'm not a racist. I spend a lot of time on the south side of Chicago, and I've been doing so for 5 years. I believe that this is an election that is about, and as it relates to guns in schools, I believe that there are well-trained people who will protect our children. Some of them may be teachers, some of them may be guards, regular guards. But I do believe that this election is about our fiscal
All right, our time has expired. Obviously some very sharp differences, but you all were polite about it. Thank you. Would you join me in thanking the candidates for their help? And Helene Miller Walsh. Thank you. We're going to split them on the plate, and we'll have the Senate candidates in District 26. If you're staying in the room, please move to the center to make room for additional audience members. That forum will begin